Okay, I'm on an unfamiliar laptop. I hope I can make this work. Luckily, my transitions aren't too complex. The title of my talk was submitted as a comprehensive approach to IT vulnerability management, which seems certain to put everybody to sleep. But look, you're all here. I decided to rename it. Quick overview. This is mostly a talk about IT vulnerability management at the introductory level. In other words, if I go to a lot of organizations in my capacity as a VCSO, and I say change management to organizations, and I get the, what do you mean? I actually had one person tell me that no, they couldn't implement change management. They needed to be able to do work based off emails and hallway conversations because some people needed to not know what was going on. I'm like, this is not a recipe for success. So I want to spice it a little with some tips from the sliver or two of experience I've had with VM in the past. VM, not meaning virtual machine in this context, I'm going to say that a lot, but we're talking about vulnerability management. And you have to understand that VM is a continuous and proactive process. It's actually a cyclical process. A lot of people think, hey, I'm running scans, I'm doing VM. No, you're doing like 1/5 of VM. Running scans is important, but it doesn't get you home. So a little bit about me. Tom already gave a couple of spoilers. I have a bunch of alphabet soup after my name, but one of the things that I think is important, and it would do everyone well, not necessarily to pursue the certification in risk management, which is what that first one is, but at least study some risk management outside the context of IT, because it does give you a lot of insight into what other folks in the business that you're supporting are thinking about day to day. I work as a VCSO, which I have to tell you is awesome. Once you get to a certain point in your career, I highly recommend doing some time as VCSO. One of the things you're all probably a little frustrated about in some aspect of your current job is, you give people all this great security advice and you feel like Cassandra, the prophetess in the whole Trojan War context, who kept making accurate predictions and no one would believe her. The thing about being a VCSO is you go and you meet with nice people and you give them security advice and they do it. It's like weird a little bit, but I like it. In my capacity here as a speaker at the RSS, I have to be careful to say that I don't speak for Sadara. That's in case I say anything really stupid and I don't want it to reflect on my employer. I've been doing this for a little while. Those of you who natively read hex numbers know that it's actually quite a long time. So, for whatever that's worth, it may just mean that I'm like on my way to dementia. I am an avid player of poker, as Tom mentioned, and an Orioles and a Cubs fan. And if that Orioles logo looks a little wonky to you, it's from the early 1980s, which is the last time the Orioles won the World Series. I have none of the usual social media except for LinkedIn. But you can find me around the Fediverse if you try. You can also check the sites about.me or where-to-find.me, and those will lead you, if you know my name, to me. I do consider myself a Geekosaurus. If you see this logo next to a social media profile, you're probably on the right track. So let's dive in. There are a lot of steps to the VM process, the vulnerability management process. We'll start with asset inventory, and then we'll talk about scoping the network. When you do scanning for vulnerability management, the network is your tool, it's your path to all the devices you want to scan. There's an internal network and an external network. Even if you think you don't have a perimeter, trust me, you have a perimeter. It may just be disappearing, or none of your interesting applications may be on it, inside it. So internal and external scanning, once you lay out that network. Then you get your results and you've got to start classifying them. One of the things that happens, I see, with vulnerability management programs that aren't doing well in organizations is they run scans, They get a pile of results. If they printed it out, it would be a stack of paper this high. Nobody prints it out, but it's 177,000 rows of data in a CSV file or in a console display, and everybody is just overwhelmed when they look at that, and then they go do something that's more satisfying. So we're going to classify the results. We're going to prioritize the results so that we fix the things that matter more first. You can't always know with perfect accuracy what would lead to you getting compromised versus not, but you can look at things and you can give them different levels of riskiness. And once you can break things up that way, separate out the cream from the whey and get the vulnerabilities that you're going to pay attention to first down to a manageable size, you can start assigning them out to people, and there are different ways to do that. And then you want to make sure that you're actually making some kind of difference. So we're going to look at some ways to measure and report it that don't feel fake and forced. So let's start talking about asset inventory. You're going to identify all the hardware and software that the org is using. That sounds real simple, but you need to do this with the stuff that's internal, that you have control over, things you're running on premises or things you're running in a private cloud tenancy. And you want to look at hardware, both virtual and real. So you may have real hardware in a data center that's actual, servers. You may have real hardware in a data center that is VM hosts running virtual servers. And then you're going to have hardware. If you have any cloud property, you're going to have hardware in that cloud, but that's going to be servers, instances that you're running in that cloud. There are different ways to automate this process, at least partially, and we'll discuss those down the deck. So document everything, what kind of asset it is, where it's located, real, virtual, cloud. Use some of the tools that are available to you. If you have an enterprise level ticketing system, it probably also hosts a configuration management database. By all means, if you have this ability, if you have something like, let's say, ServiceNow, get the asset inventory inside ServiceNow in the CMDB, get that up to date, because that's going to help you so much when you get around to assigning the tasks to fix vulnerabilities, to remediate, because the tickets that you create in there can be related directly and with very low effort to the items that are identified in that configuration management database. If you don't have that, or even if you do, but you don't know how to fill it, Nmap is an amazing tool that is free to the world to use, and I highly recommend it for identifying assets. It can do a lot of things. You could probably build a college-level cybersecurity course just on Nmap. So the details of how to use Nmap are outside the scope of this talk, but it's worth it to go and explore it and learn it. The vulnerability scanning tool that you use, whatever that may be, probably also does discovery scans. That's kind of like Nmap off steroids. But you can definitely take advantage of that to get the vulnerability tool at least to be fully aware of all the assets that you have. That doesn't necessarily translate to your configuration management database. I've never seen anyone try to use Tenable as a CMDB, for example, but at least you get the idea of what's going on in your environment. Asset inventory, the next part of asset inventory is to rank the assets. There are definitely going to be some items that are more important than others to your business, some items that are more sensitive, some items that would be a bigger problem for the business if they were to get compromised. So you want to rank them according to the criticality, the business impact that they have. The other thing you want to do is you want to get this on a cycle. Don't just do it one time and say, okay, this is what we've got, we're going to go and go forward and work off that. You want to come up with a way of being able to run either the scans or the discoveries or however you're you're doing it to populate it that first time, you want to be able to do that on a regular basis, to, be it every week, every 4 weeks. I wouldn't probably let it go more than a month or two without running an update. On the other hand, you probably don't need to do it every day. So it's the right number is going to be different for everyone, and it'll be somewhere in that range. And you want to make sure that you're getting everything that's possible to get, because you want to scan everything, even if somebody says, well, I run this little thing over under my desk. It doesn't really affect anybody else. However, if it has a vulnerability and it gets compromised, the attacker may well be able to lateral motion to other more important assets in the organization. So you do want to try and get everything in scope. So asset scoping is one thing, network scoping, also very important. You want to find your internal to external network boundaries, your DMARC, or whatever terminology you like to use about that. You have to know where things are, because you're going to run a scanning process that's going to be based in either a server in the cloud or a server inside your infrastructure, however it's appropriate for the way your network is constructed. And the reach of that scanning process is going to be limited by that boundary. So you may find, especially if your external footprint is significant, you may find that you need to run from 2 different locations, one in the public internet or in the cloud, and the other inside your on-prem network. And then while you're doing this, you're going to be identifying the most critical systems to make sure they get scanned. Suppose you have the use of a great tool for vulnerability scanning, but you only have 5,000 IPs licensed for it, and in your discovery process, you find that you have 10,300 IPs in your total footprint. You need to make some decisions. You want to go back at budget time and request an increase in the number of licenses that you have to use that product. But while you're waiting for that, you have to decide what to scan with the 5,000 that you can scan. So you're going to want to identify the more critical systems. And then that should include servers and network devices at least, and possibly endpoints, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Then you want to segment the network logically, even if it is a flat network and not segmented in actuality. You want to segment it logically so that that's going to help you down the further steps in the cycle when you're assigning remediation tasks and responsibility for getting things fixed. It will help you create logical subsets of the network that you can assign to different teams who have responsibility for the assets in those areas of your business. It may be by staff, it may be by physical location. For example, if you're a kind of a business that has a headquarters and some number of branch offices, there may be an IT person assigned to one or more of each branch office that you would want to give them the bundle of tasks to do for the locations that they're responsible for. Or it may be by business function. If you work in an area where, let's say you're doing baking and you have people that are responsible for branch operations. So you give them the assets that are related to branch operations, and there are other people responsible for corporate and personal wealth banking that have different assets that are dedicated to those functions. So you give them those. You want to make sure that you're not doing unnecessary scans. One of the things that I like to look at in this area is end users' computers. You have, let's say, 1,000 end users. They all have been issued a laptop or a desktop, or a few people have been issued both. But those are all probably built off a standard image if your IT team is not completely trying to drive itself crazy, right? So the laptops that are out there are all very much alike, you can probably get away with scanning just a representative sample, maybe even 3 or 4 of those laptops, and not trying to scan every single one. For one part, one aspect of that is the laptops, especially after hours when you're probably running your scans, will tend to be not online, so they won't get scanned, and you'll have gaps in your scan that you were trying to do. The other thing that you can do is you can designate a couple of laptops that I call lab rats and keep them in the IT shop, keep them always on the network, scan them, and you'll know if there are any issues with the current build. Now, that won't necessarily tell you if somebody has installed some weird thing on their laptop that has a vulnerability that you're not seeing, but you don't give your users administrative rights to your laptops now, do you? Please say no, everybody. But if you're still giving your users administrative rights to your laptop, stop doing that. And if you're not, then it's most likely that their laptop doesn't deviate too much from your standard build. So scanning a couple of lab rats that are always on the standard build as patched should give you more than 90% of what you need to know about your end user computers. And it takes all those unreliable network connections out of scope, so it makes your life just that much easier. The other thing to remember is that if your network is physically segmented, you need to make sure your scan process can get to everything, because if it can't, it's going to miss entire chunks of your network, and that is very, very bad. So you're going to set up a schedule. You're going to decide what you scan and when you scan it, and then you're going to try and make that schedule repeatable. Remember, this is a cyclical process. Internally, you're going to focus on the vulnerabilities that come up on your on-prem network. You may also have a scan process that runs in your cloud tenancy if you have one. Again, make sure that that scanner can get to everything inside your virtual private cloud. And like any good vulnerability scanner, it's looking for outdated software. You're going to get a lot of outdated software, especially the first few times you run scan. Missing patches, it will detect those explicitly. It'll tell you right down to the Microsoft KB numbers what you need to apply. It makes it really, try and lead the horse to the water. Then all you have to do is drink. It'll also find misconfigurations. One of the things I see a lot on scans is this web server is still accepting TLS 1.0 for connections, for HTTPS connections. So we all know TLS 1.0 was out the window a couple years ago. We shouldn't be using it anymore, and yet you're going to find lots and lots of places where it's still being accepted. So those are luckily easy to fix, and everybody can get a little mental endorphin hit from checking a box. And I can't emphasize this enough. Start making this a regular process. Get people to expect that every Friday night, scan is going to begin in the data center, and it's going to run until around noon on Sunday, and you just be aware that that's happening. Scanning is considered disruptive to normal operations by everybody who never actually worked with scanning. The number of times I've seen scanning actually disrupt something was 1. And what that instance was somebody ran an Nmap with the most aggressive settings that you can set Nmap to, which let me tell you is pretty aggressive. It's practically a DOS in its own right. And they ran that against a production environment. I'm pretty sure that was an accident. It absolutely did tip that environment over, but it was also something that was ever so easy to identify and fix and made it never happen again. Ordinary vulnerability scanning with the normal settings that you would typically use for it, I have never seen that actually disrupt a production or test environment. And yet whenever you say, I'm going to run scans this weekend, they're like, no, we're running production. Like, you won't even notice, trust me. But it does take a lot of experience for the IT and the application support folks to have with your scanning process to get them comfortable with the fact that scans are going to run, it's not going to tip anything over, everybody can just get on with their lives and go watch the bills. That is a product of making it a regular occurrence. If they know it's going to happen on the third Saturday of every month, they get used to it eventually and they stop bugging you about it. External scanning. I don't know if that's too small to read, but you're looking at your external facing assets, your web servers, your application servers, your API endpoints. You should be making sure that the external scanners are set to scan all the ports you have open on your firewall at the very least. Don't just accept the defaults of 80 and 443. The other thing I will mention is that when the first few times you do an external scan, you are going to find things like Windows boxes, random Windows boxes exposing port 3389 for remote terminals so someone can work from home. That's extremely dangerous and you want to try and shut that off. But if you'd never scanned, you wouldn't have found it. So that would be your rogue connections. There could be other things. People, if somebody exposes port 22 through the firewall, that's maybe a little better, but still, it needs to be approved by IT and IT security, and it needs to be carefully controlled. And one of the things that you may expose from an external Nmap, at least, if not a scan, is that your firewall rules are actually what you think they are. So if you have a set of official approved firewall rules opening certain ports, and then you do a scan and you find 7 more ports open that you didn't know about, you want to look into that. If you do find that situation, then you want to go, and this, again, beyond the scope of this talk, but you want to go to shodan.io and see what Shodan knows about those ports, because if they're there and Shodan knows about them, then black hats in the stands know about them too, so you better find out about them. So there are a lot of tools you could be using to perform this scan. Nessus/Tenable, they're an exhibitor here, they're wonderful. I've used them a lot. Not going to get into the specifics of how to operate Tenable because, again, beyond the scope of this talk. Also, I am not advocating for using any one tool over another. I just want you to use something. So it could be Tenable, it could be Qualys. You could use OpenVAS, Open Vulnerability Asset Scanner, that has, it's got a great price tag, so you'll probably really enjoy that. It is a little more work. What you make up for in what you gain in money cost, you make up for it in effort cost to use it. But the beautiful thing about all of these is you can get a CSV output. I appreciate the effort the scanner vendors and the teams have put into making working within their console beautiful and easy, and I can get pie charts and everything. But I'm old-fashioned. You see how old I am. If you did the hex arithmetic, you know. And I like to get a CSV, just one row for every vulnerability found, every finding made by the scanner, and I'm actually going to pull that into Excel, and then I'm going to do magic with it. Whatever tool you use, you want it to be able to automate setting up and kicking off the scan jobs themselves, because, again, emphasizing you want this on a regular schedule, so you want there to be no extra effort required for you to start a scan job at 4 p.m. on a Saturday. It's just built into the schedule, and it just happens unless you take action to stop it. So you're going to do the scheduling the regular scans thing, and then whatever changes you need to make, you can add those to each cycle, but that should become pretty rare. You should get to where your regularly scheduled scans do everything you need, and you simply let them kick off on the weekend, come in Monday morning, all the results are there, and you get to work on that. And so you're going to get to work on your scan results. What are you going to do with them? So the first thing is every scanner will give you high, medium, low risk, or critical high, medium, low, or critical high, medium, low, and informational. Informational is good for a reason that I'll get to in a minute, but it's not going to happen the first time, the first few times you scan. The first few times you scan, you're going to look at the results and go, we're going to die, because it's so many criticals, it's so many highs. Don't be afraid, it's okay. We're going to start working through them, and we're going to burn them down. So we categorize the scan results that we get by risk level. One of the things that every scanner is going to give you is a number between 1 and 10 called the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, the CVSS value. You will get a number here, and it's indicative of how bad a given issue is, but it's not 100% the thing you need to pay attention to. There are a number of things you want to look at besides the CVSS number. So now you can begin a process, and you can either do this by hand or you can write scripts to do it. I did that. You can also build a database system to take these results and ingest them and apply these enrichments to them. A couple of enrichments that I use a lot are called the EPSS and the KEV. These are different measures of how exploitable a vulnerability is. So if you think about it, there's a vulnerability in one of your systems, but it's in a situation where no one outside can get to it unless you're already so thoroughly breached that it doesn't even matter anymore, then maybe that's not the highest priority thing to fix. You could look at other issues first. So, or if it's a vulnerability that exists in the software that a bug hunter found, but they did a bunch of analysis and came to the determination that, yeah, theoretically, this is a vulnerability, but in order to exploit this vulnerability, somebody would have to apply so much technical effort to writing the code that would be able to get at that there's no way that that's what they're going to spend their effort on when there's 19 other easier things they could be doing. So maybe it's not your highest priority because it's just less likely that anyone would bother to exploit it. Or it may be something that requires so much technical skill to exploit and so much knowledge of how this particular system is configured that it makes it way less probable that somebody would build an exploit for that. That all factors into that EPSS number that there's a description about coming up. The other thing is, based on what the asset is, if it were exploited, what would the impact of that be? If the impact is that our load balancer would tend to favor one server over the other to take transactions 80% of the time, and it wouldn't be 50-50 like it's supposed to be, that's not great, but it's also not a disaster. How critical is the asset in question that the vulnerability is located on? It may be super critical, it may be your customer database, or it may be your football pool. Okay, if it's your football pool, I know some people are going, that's the worst thing, but it's not. So you look at that. It's a good idea to take the results every time you run the scan and ingest them into some kind of a database. First of all, some of these metrics of how bad each result is will vary over time, especially the exploitability. As a vulnerability is out there and it's exposed to the hacking community, the criminal hacking community, more and more, they may develop novel ways to approach exploiting that, and the probability of the exploitation goes up. But that's going to change over time. Whenever you get an exploitability score for a vulnerability, it is a point-in-time score. So they do change. So enriching scans to help with the prioritization, let's talk about the EPSS. The EPSS is administered by a nonprofit called first.org. You can go to their website. The EPSS page gives you everything you need to know. There is a measure for each CVE of how likely it is to get an exploit developed against it. It does change over time. They give you a free-to-use API that will allow you for any CVE to fetch the current EPSS score or the EPSS score for it from any point in time in the past. So like when I said I had built a script to do this enrichment on vulnerability results that I get, this is one of the two major operations that my script performs. Is it goes for the CVE, it fetches the EPSS, and it plugs in the current EPSS for that CVE into the CSV as an additional column. The other thing is the KEV. This is the known exploited vulnerability. This is administered by the CISA, part of the federal government. Absolutely the best thing that came out of the Trump administration is the CISA. Thank goodness for that. Can't say the man was an unmitigated horror. It has, the KEV answers two questions. The first one is, has this vulnerability been used in a reported attack? In other words, do we know that some bad guys attacked someone using this vulnerability, yes or no? And then if it's a yes, was that a ransomware attack? Because that would be a subset of all the known attacks. So knowing the KEV value for a given vulnerability is the key to understanding, are the criminal gangs that are out there attacking people already using this vulnerability? To me, that makes it automatically a higher priority to get it remediated on my stuff, because this is something that they're already using and comfortable with using, and I don't want it to be available to them in my stack. It's a small list. When I use this one, I don't use, they do have an API, but I don't bother with it. I just import the whole table and then look up in the table. It's tiny, it's a few hundred rows. So once you have all these elements available. Yeah, sure.
So the CVE I'm familiar with, these two ones are great. Do you recommend one over the other, or like all three?
I use them both.
You use them both?
I use them both. As you see in the line I just revealed, I built a little algebraic formula to create a kind of an arbitrary David's risk score for a given vulnerability. And it takes into account the CVSS rating, the 1 to 10 rating. It takes into account the EPSS, which is a number between 0 and 1.0. It's strictly, as a probability, the way you remember it from your stats class. And then I multiply that by a value if the KEV is yes. And then I add a little additional value to kind of bump it up there if the KEV is ransomware. So when I add those things together, I get a number between 1 and 100 that I can use to stack rank my vulnerabilities in terms of how bad they are and how quickly I want to get them fixed. Then when I section them up according to the different teams, I'm able to draw a line across it, let's say at David's score of 72 or whatever the number is, to give everybody a manageable set of things to go work on. In addition to bugs that have CVEs, because not everything has a CVE, there are misconfigurations and there are missing patches that are going to come out in your scan results. If you're doing what I described just before, where you're assigning an overall risk score for a CVE based on combining EPSS and KEV and CVSS, you can also assign risk scores to things that don't have CVEs. Like, I'm using an outdated version of TLS, doesn't have a CVE, but you can assign a risk score to it and then use that in your prioritization scheme. You also want to make sure that when you're assigning the risk score, you're not just thinking about it in terms of the technical impact, but also what would this do to the business if it were exploited. So something that seems fairly light from a technical impact may be extremely disruptive to the business if, for example, the customer database server were affected. So you may adjust the risk score or your overall prioritization based on that kind of impact. And then all of these things, are going to be a pain in the neck to ever do by hand, certainly forever. So once you're getting to where everything is done routinely and cyclically, you want to make sure that you're streamlining this as much as possible, automating all the steps of it that you can. And then once you have the results with that risk score included, like I said, I'm old-fashioned. I build a lot of Excel pivot tables. To me, that is more informative of what I need to prioritize and do next than any pie chart that I ever saw on a scanner's dashboard. So, your mileage may vary, but give it a try, because once you get used to building those pivot tables, you find that there are a lot of creative ways to filter the results and get to the subset you need to focus on. So there are two ways to prioritize vulnerabilities, in my opinion. One is by the urgency. We just did all that work to stack rank everything and create, a knowledge of which ones were the most important to fix now. But the other thing you need to take into effect, and you'll do this in conversation with the IT side of the house, is what's available and easy to get the buy-in from the change management committee and whatever else to fix now versus what is going to be a lot of work and administrative overhead and looking for an outage window and all the other things you need. So even if they aren't the most urgent, technically urgent vulnerabilities, but they're available to fix now, fix them now. Get it out of the way. Clear the deck for the harder stuff. When you have the enrichment results, that helps you with the urgency ranking. It doesn't help you at all with the opportunity ranking, but it's worth knowing what's going on. Everyone is going to consider the factors that go into that risk scoring formula differently. That's why I just gave A, B, C, and D as the coefficients. I'm not going to tell you the solution I came up with, simply because it might not be right for you. You will play around with it. You can experiment with this in a spreadsheet and try different values out and see how things rank up. You're going to find the result that is correct for you. But definitely, as the IT security folks, you're going to focus on what's the most severe and what has the most impact. That opportunity factor is going to come to you from IT. Yes, get the stuff that can be fixed quickly, but also keep a kind of a low-key emphasis on the more severe things. When they say, well, we can do all this right away, we can do this tonight. Great, do this tonight, but let's not lose sight of these other very severe things, because if something exploits those, we're gonna have bad trouble. So KEV and EPSS, but even more KEV, is bringing into your considerations something of the threat landscape, because CISA is, I think, correctly inferring from, they say on all the financial product commercials, prior results do not indicate future performance. But when it comes to vulnerabilities, I think it kind of does. If you're looking at a vulnerability that's already been used in 3 ransomware attacks, you can believe that because of the success they've had with it, that gang is looking for other opportunities to use that vulnerability in a ransomware attack. And if they find it in your environment, you're going to have a bad day. So you want to look at what's active out there in the world, what's being exploited, and what's on the threat landscape. You should have CTI sources. If anybody in here is like wondering, what does CTI mean? Then let's talk afterward. But seriously, you should be looking at the cyber threat intelligence sources that are available to you. Absolutely everyone in this room, I don't care what industry you work in or what field of endeavor, you have an ISAC available that is somewhat customized to your pursuits. by all means look into your local ISAC and join it. I've never seen one that costs more than $1,000 for an organization to join. If you're a school or a local government or a nonprofit or any of another probably 3 or 4 categories, there's an ISAC for you that is free, as in the best price. Join your ISAC. Start getting that threat intelligence feed so you know what's going on, what's coming at you from the criminal world, so that you can focus your defenses where they will actually help. You're also going to have compliance requirements. Maybe you're a PCI sensitive environment. Maybe you're in healthcare and you need to commune with the HIPPO. But generally, those compliance requirements, when you hear compliance requirements, we all like to go, ugh, compliance. But really, those are business requirements. That's what makes your organization have a chance at being successful, is hewing to those requirements. So consider it business requirements and be prepared to pay attention to it. And then the opportunity factor definitely comes in when you look at the schedules of different production and what assets are being actively used versus what's maybe in a more quiescent state, and what you have a scheduling opportunity to fix at one time or another. And if there's any way that you can automate those tasks, there may be things that, based on, for example, production schedules, you know that you can lay out schedules for assigning IT tasks and getting things done at different times. By all means do that, because part of the effectiveness of your VM program is going to be making it cyclical, and part of making it cyclical and not driving yourself crazy and having this be your full-time job, because this is nobody's full-time job unless you're in like a Fortune 10 company, is being able to automate big parts of this. So finally, it's time to assign out the remediation tasks. You want to delegate the tasks to the teams that have the responsibility for the assets in question. If the scan jobs that you run align to the team responsibilities, because you set it up that way, that's a huge help. And if you have ticketing system, like ServiceNow or Jira or whatever, if you can emit tickets directly into your ticketing system, that's great. If it has an API, you can write a script to do that. Or if your scan facility integrates with the ticketing system that you have, even better, because the tickets will just go in there, become change tickets, and then you just need to shepherd them through the process. What's very important is that there be accountability in your organization for every vulnerability that you find. If there are SLAs because you have a managed service provider, that's even better, because you can hold people to those SLAs to get things fixed. And make sure that all the stakeholders, including the business elements that use the systems that you're patching, understand why these vulnerabilities are critical to fix. Again, automation will be your friend. And I'm being told I have very little time left somehow, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. If I build this slide right out, then the metrics that I've seen for measuring vulnerability programs mostly suck, I'll say that. Mean time to remediation may be important, but that doesn't really tell me if the higher priority, higher criticality things are getting fixed or not. But if you're doing risk scores, you can aggregate those and you can look at reduction in the aggregate number, aggregate amount of risk, even though it's dimensionless. 1,800 is worse than 650. So if you get it from 1,800 to 650, you're doing something right. And then reporting, I'm going to say just tailor the results, the reports that you do to the different audiences. You're going to have an executive version, you're going to have an IT version, and so on. Reduction in vulnerabilities overall and reduction in that aggregate risk score are going to be the things that you want to highlight. And continuous improvement, Based on new threats, based on new technology, you should always be looking to improve this vulnerability process, but get it cyclical first and then start to work on improving how it is. So, remember the key steps in the overall vulnerability management cycle. Remember the importance of prioritizing using the risk. Automate where you can and continuously improve. And yes, these slides will be available after the conference on the RSS website. And I can be reached at first.last@rockinfosec.com. And I'm finishing on time. But I have time for a few questions.
Sure, if you'd like. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Brian.
You talked about establishing a cycle. If I'm working with an organization that really hasn't done vulnerability management, it seems like I want to do a little bit further out, give them time to go through some remediation, and as part of my continuous improvement, bring it back. Because if I'm running a scan this week, and then I run a scan next week, and it says you didn't do anything,
Right.
I'm defeating my cause.
You're right. And if you get that deer in the headlights look, like I get for change management all the time, but only sometimes for vulnerability management, then you need to baby them through one iteration, however long it takes, before you get them on a weekly or a monthly.